Rain was falling hard outside the small wooden cabin. The wind howled through the forest like a voice calling for help. Inside the cabin, a man named Evan sat near a dim fire, his hands covered in grease from fixing an old radio. He had lived alone for months on this ruined planet, far away from the noise of war and machines. He thought the night would be quiet, but then he heard something strange, a soft thump. Then another, like footsteps in the mud. He stood up, listening carefully. The storm outside was wild, yet between the thunder, he could hear it again, a faint cry, weak and scared. Evan grabbed his flashlight and opened the door. The cold wind hit his face as rain poured down. The beam of light moved across the ground. And then he saw it, a trail of glowing green-blue blood, shining softly on the wet earth. His heart raced. He followed the trail into the dark forest, each step echoing in the storm. After a few meters, he found her, a figure lying in the mud, trembling. Her skin faintly glowed under the lightning, her clothes torn, her breathing fast. Evan's breath caught. She wasn't human, yet her face was almost human, her eyes large and full of fear. Hey, you're hurt, he said softly, crouching beside her. The girl flinched and turned away, clutching her side. Don't look at me, she whispered weakly. Her voice was trembling, broken. Evan hesitated. His instincts told him to leave, to walk away. He had seen what aliens could do. He had fought them once, but something in her voice stopped him. It wasn't a threat, it was pain. He took off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you, he said. She didn't answer. Her body was shaking, her eyes closing slowly as the rain fell harder. Without thinking, Evan lifted her into his arms. She was light, almost weightless. Her skin was cold like metal, yet soft like silk. He carried her back to the cabin, kicking the door shut behind him. He laid her gently on his old couch near the fire. For a moment, he just stood there, watching her. The light from the fire reflected off her glowing skin. He noticed faint symbols along her arms, like silver tattoos that shimmered when she breathed. Her hair, pale and silver, clung to her wet face. Evan sighed and knelt beside her. He checked her wound, a deep cut near her ribs. He grabbed a clean cloth and pressed it gently. She gasped in pain, whispering again, "Please, don't look at me." He turned his eyes away, trying to give her some comfort. "I just want to help," he said quietly. "You're bleeding badly." When she finally relaxed a little, Evan moved closer to the fire and looked at her reflection in the window. The storm outside flashed light into the room. For a second, he saw her eyes open, bright, glowing like liquid gold. They looked at him, then quickly shut again. Evan sat down near the wall, staring at the floor. Who was she? What was she doing here on this dead planet? The war had ended years ago, or so he thought. Yet here she was, bleeding, hiding, afraid. Hours passed. The storm softened. The only sound was the crackling fire. Evan's mind kept going back to her words. "Don't look at me." What did she mean? Was it shame, or danger, or something else? As dawn began to break, the light from the window touched her face. Evan turned slowly. The alien girl stirred in her sleep, whispering something in a language he didn't know. For a moment, the glow on her skin flickered, showing a glimpse of something beneath. Veins of light, moving gently like stars under her skin. Evan felt his chest tighten. She wasn't a monster. She looked fragile, lost, almost human. He didn't know why, but he felt like fate had brought her here. He stood, walked quietly to the door, and looked outside. The forest was silent now, but in the distance, he could see a faint red light, a search drone, moving slowly between the trees. He turned back toward her, whispering to himself, "Whoever you are, you're not safe here." The alien girl opened her eyes again, weak but clear. "Don't look at me," she said once more, but this time her voice broke. "They'll kill you if they find me." Evan froze. The words sank deep into his mind. Outside, thunder rumbled again. Inside, the girl's faint light shimmered across the cabin walls, and for the first time in months, Evan felt fear, not for himself, but for someone else. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but one thing was certain. He couldn't turn her away, not now, not after seeing those eyes, not after hearing that voice. Outside, the red light vanished into the rain, but the danger had only just begun. When morning came, the storm had passed. The forest outside was silent, covered in mist. Inside the cabin, the fire had turned to faint orange embers. Evan sat near the table, his eyes on the strange girl sleeping on his couch. Her breathing was slow, her glowing skin dimmed to a soft pale light. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face. The fear, the whisper, the pain. He had seen aliens before during the war, but none like her. She looked almost human. Only her skin shimmered faintly like light through water. When she moved, Evan stood up. She opened her eyes slowly, blinking at the new light of day. "You're safe now," he said quietly. "You're in my cabin." She looked around, confused. Her gaze landed on him, and for a second, her glow brightened. She quickly turned away, pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked, her voice soft and trembling. "You would have died out there," he replied. "I couldn't just leave you." Her hands gripped the edge of the blanket. "You don't understand," she whispered. "They will find me. And if they do, you will die too." Evan frowned, walking to the window. "Who are they?" he asked, but she didn't answer. Her fingers brushed over the symbols on her arm. They shimmered faintly like moving silver veins. He noticed the wound near her ribs had sealed faster than a normal human's would. "You heal fast," he said without thinking. She tensed. "Don't look," she whispered sharply, turning away from him. He sighed and turned his eyes to the fire. "Fine," he said. "I won't." For a while, there was silence. Only the faint crackling of wood and the sound of rain dripping from the roof filled the air. Then she spoke again, her voice quieter this time. "My name is Lyra," she said slowly. "I wasn't supposed to come here." Evan looked at her. "Then why did you?" Lyra hesitated. Her fingers traced one of the glowing marks on her skin. "Because I had no choice," she said. "My people, they call us hybrids, half human, half something else." Her eyes filled with tears. "Your soldiers hunt us. They think we are dangerous." Evan's heart sank. "Humans did that to you?" She nodded. "They said we don't belong anywhere." He didn't know what to say. His memories of war came rushing back. Orders, chaos, fear. He remembered the faces of those they called enemies. He remembered believing they were monsters. But now, sitting here, he saw none of that. He saw a frightened girl trying to survive. Lyra shivered suddenly, her glow flickering. Evan stepped forward and offered a blanket. "Here, take this," he said gently. She hesitated, then took it, their fingers brushing briefly. Her skin was warm now, pulsing faintly like light under flesh. "You shouldn't have saved me," she murmured. "Now they'll come for both of us." Evan smiled faintly. "Then I guess I'll just have to be ready." She looked up at him for the first time, really looked. Her golden eyes reflected the firelight, and for a moment, the fear in them softened. "You don't even know what I am," she said quietly. "Maybe not," he replied. "But I know what I saw, someone who needed help." Her lips trembled, and she turned away again. "Don't look at me," she whispered. "If you see what I really am, you'll regret it." Evan leaned against the wall, his voice calm. "Try me." She didn't respond. Her glow dimmed as she lay back down, exhausted. Evan sat near the fire, watching her until her breathing slowed again. Hours passed. The mist outside thickened, and a faint humming sound grew in the distance. Evan walked to the window. Red lights flickered through the fog, moving in a slow pattern. His heart tightened. "Search drones," he muttered. He turned toward Lyra. "We have to move," he said firmly, but when he stepped closer, the blanket slipped from her shoulder, and he froze. Her skin beneath the fabric shimmered with threads of light, moving slowly like living stars beneath her skin. The glow cast gentle patterns across the walls. For a moment, he forgot to breathe. Lyra gasped and pulled the blanket back up. "I told you not to look," she cried, her voice full of shame and fear. Evan raised his hand slowly. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm not afraid." Her eyes widened. "You should be," she whispered. "If they see me like this, they'll destroy everything." Outside, the drone lights swept past the cabin again. Evan's mind raced, but his heart had already decided. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Then they'll have to go through me first." Lyra stared at him, her eyes glowing brighter. For a moment, neither spoke. The fire crackled, and rain dripped from the roof. The silence between them was heavy, but inside that silence, something began to change. For the first time since the war began, Evan didn't feel alone anymore. The hum outside grew louder. A deep, mechanical vibration rolled across the forest like thunder. Evan stepped to the window. The red glow of search drones cutting through the mist. They were closer now, scanning every inch of land. He turned toward Lyra, who sat trembling on the couch, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim firelight. "They found you," he whispered, gripping the rifle hanging on the wall. Lyra's hands shook as she held the blanket tighter. "No," she breathed. "They found us." Evan peeked through the curtain again, counting at least 3 drones sweeping the area. Their lights flickered through the fog like floating eyes. "They're looking for heat signatures," he muttered. "We can't stay here." Lyra nodded weakly, but her body seemed to flicker, her form shimmering between solid and light. "I can't move fast," she said. "My energy is fading." Evan frowned. "Energy?" he asked. She hesitated, looking at her glowing hands. "I'm not like you," she said softly. "I'm part organic, part energy, part human." He stared, unsure if he heard right. "Part human," he repeated. Lyra nodded, her voice low. "I was born from an experiment, one that humans started long before your wars ended." Evan felt his chest tighten. "What kind of experiment?" Lyra looked at the window as if afraid the forest could hear her. "They tried to create peace," she said. "A hybrid who could live in both worlds, human and alien. They said if both species shared blood, they'd stop fighting." Her voice cracked. "But they failed. Instead of peace, they made us weapons." Evan's eyes softened. "So you ran?" "Yes," she whispered. "I escaped from the laboratory 3 nights ago. They wanted to erase me." The hum outside grew sharper. One of the drones stopped near the cabin, a red beam sweeping across the roof. Evan's heart pounded. He pulled the curtains shut and whispered, "Stay low." Lyra closed her eyes, and the symbols on her arm began to dim. The glow faded slowly until her skin looked almost human again. Evan stared in awe. "You can hide it," he said. She nodded weakly. "But only for a while. It drains my energy." The red light flashed through the cracks of the window. The drone was right outside. Evan crouched near the floor, rifle ready. Lyra's breath grew shallow, her glow flickering again. "Please," she whispered. "Don't fight them. If they find me, I'll surrender." Evan turned sharply. "No, you won't," he said. "I'm not letting them take you." "But you don't even know me," she said softly, tears forming in her eyes. "I don't have to," he replied. "I've seen what fear does to people. You're not their enemy." The drone's red light passed over the window, then drifted away into the mist. The sound faded slowly, leaving the cabin in silence again. Evan exhaled in relief. "They'll come back," Lyra said quietly. "With soldiers next time." Evan looked at her, his voice firm. "Then we'll be gone before they do." Lyra's eyes glowed faintly again. "You would risk everything for me?" Evan nodded. "You're not the first person I've saved," he said. "But you might be the first one who makes me believe it still matters." Her lips parted slightly, her eyes searching his face. For a second, the air between them felt heavy, filled with warmth and fear. Suddenly, Lyra gasped and clutched her chest. The light beneath her skin pulsed rapidly. Evan rushed to her side. "What's happening?" he asked. "My system, it's unstable," she whispered. "When I hide my glow too long, it builds pressure inside. I need to release it." "Release it how?" he asked. She looked into his eyes, her voice trembling. "Through touch." Before Evan could respond, her hand brushed his arm. A wave of soft light spread across his skin, not burning, but warm, comforting. For a second, he saw flashes in his mind, images that weren't his, stars, laboratories, faces in white suits, pain, and fear. Then it was gone. He stepped back, breathing hard. "What was that?" "Our memories connect when I release energy," she said weakly. "You saw what I am." Evan stared at her, speechless. "You were born in a cage," he said slowly, "and they called you a weapon." She nodded, tears falling silently. "Now you know why I said not to look at me." He looked down at her trembling hands. "Lyra," he said softly, "you're not a weapon. You're proof that they were wrong." The firelight danced across her face, soft and golden. Her eyes lifted to his, filled with something fragile, hope. Outside, the fog thickened, the forest quiet once more, but somewhere beyond the mist, the soldiers had already begun to move, guided by signals from the drones. Inside the cabin, Lyra whispered, "They'll come at sunrise." Evan loaded his rifle and looked toward the door. "Then we have till dawn," he said, his voice calm, but his eyes burning with determination. Lyra's glow flickered gently, her face soft in the firelight. "Why are you doing this?" she asked again. Evan smiled faintly. "Because someone once told me humans are supposed to protect life, not destroy it." And as the last ember flickered in the fireplace, both of them knew the night would not end quietly. The sky outside was still dark, but the horizon had begun to fade from black to gray. Evan stood near the door, rifle in hand, listening to the distant hum of engines echoing through the valley. Lyra sat on the couch, her blanket wrapped tight, her glow almost gone. She looked weaker now, pale, her energy fading with every minute. "They're coming," she whispered, her golden eyes flickering like dying stars. Evan didn't answer. He had already heard it, the heavy mechanical rhythm of dropships moving through the clouds, the kind that carried soldiers. He checked the bullets in his rifle, then glanced at her. "You can still run if you try," he said. "Head toward the river behind the ridge. I'll hold them off." Lyra shook her head slowly. "You don't understand. They can track my energy. Wherever I go, they'll follow." Evan stepped closer, frustration and worry fighting inside him. "Then what do you want me to do? Sit here and wait for them to burn the cabin?" She looked at him with calm sadness. "No," she said softly. "I want you to survive." Outside, the sound of turbines roared louder. The air began to shake. Dust fell from the cabin roof as the first dropship hovered above the clearing. Bright white lights cut through the fog, turning night into blinding day. Evan squinted, pulling the curtain just enough to see. 3 soldiers in gray armor moved through the field, scanning the ground with handheld detectors. Their helmets flashed with green indicators. They were close, too close. Evan turned back to Lyra. "They're armed," he said, "and they're searching for your signal." Lyra pressed her hands together, whispering something in a language he didn't know. For a moment, her skin flickered faintly, then dimmed completely. "They won't sense me now," she said weakly, "but it will drain me fast." Evan nodded. "Then we'll make it count." He pulled open a small trapdoor beneath the rug, an old escape hatch leading to a storm shelter. "Down there," he said. "It connects to the forest through a tunnel. Go." Lyra stared at him. "What about you?" "I'll distract them," he said, his tone steady. "Someone has to make them look the other way." She hesitated, her lip trembling. "You'll die if they see you." He gave a faint smile. "Let's hope they're as blind as their orders." Outside, the soldiers reached the porch. Their footsteps thudded against the wood. A metallic voice called out, "Human residents detected. Step outside for inspection." Evan motioned for Lyra to move. She climbed down into the dark shelter, her breath shallow. He closed the hatch just as the cabin door burst open. 2 soldiers entered, their weapons raised. Their armor shimmered with blue lines pulsing like veins. "Identify yourself," one ordered, his voice mechanical through the helmet. Evan lifted his hand slowly. "Name's Evan Cole," he said calmly. "Used to be Scout Division, stationed here after the war." The soldiers scanned the room, their visors glowing green. One pointed toward the couch. "Thermal residue detected." Evan forced a tired smile. "That'd be me, haven't slept much." The soldier tilted his head, then walked toward the fireplace. A faint hum came from his scanner. "Unregistered bioenergy trace," he said. "Someone else was here." Evan's grip tightened on the rifle still leaning by the wall. "You calling me a liar?" he asked, his tone sharp. Before the soldier could reply, Evan kicked the table forward, knocking both men off balance. He grabbed the rifle and fired once, the shot echoing through the cabin. One soldier fell, sparks flying from his armor. The other shouted into his comms, "Hostile human. Sector 12. Engage." Evan ran for the back door, bullets shattering the window. He dove behind the woodpile outside as beams of plasma scorched the walls. Smoke and fire filled the air. The cabin was burning. Down below, Lyra felt the vibration through the tunnel walls. Her eyes widened. "Evan," she cried. Above, he coughed through the smoke, firing another round to slow them down. His lungs burned. His ears rang. He looked toward the trapdoor. Flames creeping closer, he had seconds to decide. He ran to the hatch, kicking away the debris. Go, he shouted. Lyra reached up, glowing faintly. You can't come down. The tunnel's too narrow, she said. I'll make it fit, he growled. But before he could climb down, an explosion tore through the front wall. The soldiers' reinforcements had arrived. Evan shielded Lyra with his body as debris flew everywhere. Smoke filled the air like a storm of ash. Lyra's hand pressed against his chest, her voice shaking. I can protect you, she said. Her skin began to glow brightly, her energy bursting like light through glass. The nearest soldiers froze as the entire cabin flooded with white radiance. Their scanners malfunctioned, alarms beeping wildly. The force threw them backward into the mud outside. When the light faded, the cabin was gone. Only ashes and a crater remained. In the middle stood Evan and Lyra, surrounded by smoke and silence. Evan stared at her in disbelief, her eyes now pure gold. You did that? He whispered. She nodded weakly. I can release energy, but it shortens my life. Evan's throat tightened. You shouldn't have. Lyra smiled faintly. I told you. I wanted you to survive. He reached out, catching her before she collapsed. The forest was quiet again, but the battle had just begun. The soldiers would return, stronger and angrier. As the first rays of dawn broke through the mist, Evan carried her toward the river, smoke trailing behind them. He didn't look back. Not once. The past was burning, but the future, though uncertain, was still ahead. The forest was still smoking when Evan carried Lyra through the mist. His arms trembled from exhaustion. His breath came in short bursts. But he didn't stop. Behind them, the remains of the cabin still glowed faintly under the rising sun. Lyra's head rested against his shoulder, her light now dim and fading. Every few steps, she whispered something he couldn't understand, words from a language that sounded more like music than speech. Evan looked down at her face, pale but peaceful. Hold on, he murmured. We're almost there. They reached the river, a wide, slow-moving stream glowing faintly from alien spores drifting on its surface. The water reflected the light of dawn like molten gold. Evan laid her down gently on a patch of grass. We'll rest here, he said. Lyra's eyes fluttered open. No, they'll follow, she whispered weakly. They always follow. He glanced at the sky. A faint trail of smoke from a dropship moved far to the west. Then we'll move again soon, he replied. But first, you need strength. Evan took a small flask from his jacket and offered it. Water, he said. She smiled faintly. You keep giving, she whispered. Humans always give until they break. He sat beside her, his expression unreadable. Maybe we just don't know how to stop caring, he said softly. Lyra turned her face toward the water. My mother used to say the same thing, she said. She was human. Evan froze. Your mother? She nodded, her voice quiet as the wind. She was one of the scientists who created me. She believed I could bring peace. But the others didn't. When the experiments went wrong, they tried to erase everything. Even her. She died protecting me. Evan looked away, the weight of her words sinking deep. So you're what's left of her dream, he said. Lyra smiled sadly. Or her mistake, she whispered. Depends who you ask. For a moment, silence settled between them. Only the sound of the river and the wind filled the air. Evan reached into his bag and pulled out a folded photo. A small, worn picture of his old unit, smiling before the war. He stared at it for a second before putting it back. I used to believe we were saving humanity, he said. But now I think we were just running from our own guilt. Lyra looked at him curiously. Guilt? He nodded. We destroyed planets, wiped out cities, called it survival, he said. Maybe you're the first proof that there's still something better in us. Her eyes softened. You don't have to fix what's broken, she said gently. Sometimes all you can do is care. He smiled faintly. Then I'll care. Before she could reply, the sound of a scanner echoed from the trees. Evan grabbed his rifle. They're close again, he whispered. Get ready. Lyra struggled to stand, but her legs gave way. I can't run, she said. My energy is unstable. Evan glanced at the river, then at her. Can you use it? She hesitated. Yes, but it will burn me inside. He looked straight into her eyes. Then don't do it unless you have to. The air grew tense as two soldiers stepped through the fog, their armor gleaming under the sunlight. One raised a scanner. "Target confirmed," he said coldly. "Capture alive." Evan fired first. The shot hit the nearest soldier, sending sparks across his armor. Lyra's eyes flared bright gold. The other soldier aimed at Evan, but before he could shoot, a wave of blinding light burst from Lyra's hands. The world turned white for a moment. The sound was like wind and thunder mixed together. When it faded, both soldiers lay unconscious, their armor cracked and smoking. Evan turned toward her, his face pale with shock. "You said it would kill you," he said. She knelt in the grass, shaking. "Not yet," she whispered, "but soon." He dropped beside her, gripping her shoulders. "Don't say that," he said. "We'll find a way." Lyra looked up at him, tears glistening in her eyes. "Evan," she whispered, "you don't understand. I was made to end wars. If I release all my energy, it creates peace, by erasing everything." Evan froze, his heart pounding. "Erase." She nodded slowly. "Everything within miles. It's the fail-safe the scientists built in. I am the weapon of peace." For a moment, Evan couldn't speak. The river shimmered beside them, reflecting both fear and sunlight. He reached out, touching her hand gently. "You're not a weapon anymore," he said firmly. "You're a person." Lyra looked at him for a long moment, her lips trembling. Then she whispered, "If you believe that, then maybe I can too." The wind carried her words away as the light of morning broke fully through the mist. Somewhere far above, more ships moved in formation, searching. The war between duty and mercy was about to begin again. Evan looked up at the sky, his jaw set. "Then we'll end it on our terms," he said quietly. Lyra smiled faintly, her glow returning, not from fear this time, but from hope, the kind of hope that lights the darkest worlds. The wind roared through the valley as Evan led Lyra up the narrow path toward the mountains. Smoke from the burning forest still rose behind them, dark against the pale morning sky. Every step was heavy, every breath a reminder that time was running out. Lyra stumbled once, nearly falling. Evan caught her arm and steadied her. "Easy," he said. "We're almost there." She nodded weakly, her glow flickering like a candle struggling against the wind. They climbed higher until the trees thinned and the air turned cold. The mountains stretched endlessly above them, sharp and silent. Evan scanned the ridge ahead. "There's an outpost up there," he said, "abandoned after the war." Lyra's voice was faint. "And if it's not empty?" Evan smiled without humor. "Then we'll borrow it anyway." Behind them, a distant rumble echoed through the valley. The soldiers were coming. Fast. Their ships left trails of white smoke cutting across the blue sky. Lyra looked back with fear in her eyes. "They'll catch us," she said. "You can still leave me." He stopped and faced her. "Not happening," he said firmly. "If they want you, they'll have to go through me first." For a moment, she just looked at him, her golden eyes trembling. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why risk everything for someone you barely know?" Evan glanced at the mountains, then back at her. "Because you remind me what it means to care," he said. "And I'm tired of losing the people who make me feel human." Lyra's lips parted slightly, but no words came. She turned her face away, hiding the emotion that burned behind her eyes. The wind picked up again, carrying the hum of engines closer. Evan grabbed her hand. "Come on," he said. They ran toward the cliffs where the remains of an old watchtower stood, broken and covered in vines. Inside the ruins, dust floated through beams of sunlight. The air smelled of rust and old machines. Evan found a control panel half buried under rocks and tried to power it. Sparks flashed weakly. "If I can get this working, maybe I can jam their scanners," he muttered. Lyra knelt beside him, pressing her glowing hand against the console. Light spread across the metal surface, and suddenly, the panel came alive. "Try now," she whispered. Evan stared in disbelief. "You did that?" he asked. She nodded. "Energy manipulation is part of what I am." He grinned. "Remind me never to doubt you again." But before either could relax, a shadow fell across the floor. The sound of turbines thundered overhead, and the ground trembled as dropships descended. Evan cursed under his breath. "They found us anyway." Lyra's glow brightened as she stood. "They're locking on my signal," she said. "If I release enough power, I can overload their systems, but it will hurt you." Evan shook his head. You're not doing that. I have to, she said, her voice breaking. They won't stop. They'll destroy everything. He stepped closer, his voice low and steady. Lyra, listen to me. You are not their weapon anymore. You're more than what they made you. Tears glimmered in her eyes. If I don't use my power, they'll take me, she whispered, and they'll use me to destroy others. Evan placed a hand on her shoulder. Then we make another choice, he said. One they'll never expect. Before she could answer, the tower exploded in a burst of plasma fire. The blast threw them to the ground. Dust and debris filled the air. Evan coughed, pulling Lyra close. Stay down, he said. Through the smoke, armored soldiers advanced. Their rifles glowed with blue light. A mechanical voice shouted, Surrender the hybrid. No harm will come to you. Evan fired first. A single shot took down the lead soldier. The rest opened fire. Beams tearing through stone. Lyra's body began to glow brighter, the symbols on her skin pulsing like stars. Stop, Evan shouted. You'll burn yourself. Her voice was calm but sad. If this is what it takes to keep you safe, then it's worth it. She raised her hands, and a wave of pure light erupted from her. The soldiers stumbled, their weapons shorting out. The dropships overhead flickered, then crashed into the cliffs with thunderous noise. When the light faded, the battlefield was silent. Evan knelt beside her. Lyra, he whispered, you're bleeding light. She smiled weakly, her skin dimming. I told you it burns me, she said, but we're alive for now. He held her tightly, refusing to let go. You saved me again, he said quietly. Her eyes softened. No, she whispered. We saved each other. For a while, neither spoke. The wind carried the smell of metal and ash. Evan looked out at the distant horizon where the sun broke through the clouds. We can't stay here, he said. There's got to be somewhere they can't find us. Lyra nodded faintly. There's a valley beyond the mountains, she said, where their scanners can't reach. My mother told me about it. Evan helped her stand. Then that's where we'll go, he said. They started walking again, side by side, the wreckage of war behind them, the unknown ahead. Lyra's light flickered weakly with each step, but it was still there, a fragile promise in a dark world. And as the sun rose higher, painting the mountains gold, Evan knew the hardest choice was still waiting for them. The sun rose slow and golden across the mountain ridge, spreading its light over a world scarred by fire and smoke. Evan and Lyra walked through the tall grass that bent under the wind, the air thin and cold. Every step felt heavier than the last, but neither stopped. Not after everything they had survived. By midday, they reached the valley Lyra had spoken of, a vast open field surrounded by steep cliffs and glowing rivers that wound like silver veins. Strange flowers shimmered faintly in the wind, and the silence felt almost sacred. This place, Lyra whispered. It's hidden from the satellites. My mother used to bring me here in my dreams. Evan looked around, scanning the horizon. Then this is where we stay, he said. At least until you heal. Lyra smiled faintly. I don't heal the way you do, she said. My energy burns away with every surge. He frowned. You mean what happened at the tower? She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. Each time I use my power, I lose a piece of myself. I don't have much left. Evan stepped closer, anger and worry mixing in his chest. You're not dying. Not after all this, he said. We'll find a way. Lyra reached out and touched his hand gently. Evan, she said softly, sometimes the only way to save something is to let go. Before he could answer, the wind shifted, carrying a low hum. Evan turned sharply, his instincts flaring. No, he muttered. They found us. High above, a single command ship broke through the clouds, larger than any dropship before. Its hull glowed with crimson light. Central Division, Lyra whispered. The generals themselves. Evan tightened his grip on his rifle. Then this is it, he said. No more running. Lyra looked at him sadly. If they fire, this valley will burn, she said. But if I release my energy, I can stop them. He turned to her, shaking his head. That's suicide. Her eyes glowed faintly, golden and calm. It's what I was made for, she whispered. Evan grabbed her shoulders, his voice breaking. No, listen to me. You were made to live, not to die for people who don't deserve you. Lyra looked at him with tears glimmering in her eyes. And what about you? she asked softly. Would you die for me? He didn't answer right away. He looked at her, at the girl who wasn't meant to exist, who carried the light of two worlds in her veins. And he felt something shift inside him. Yes, he said finally, without a doubt. For a moment, everything was silent. The command ship above began charging its weapons, a deep red glow spreading across the clouds. Lyra looked up, then back at him. Then you'll have to trust me, she whispered. She placed her palm against his chest, her skin glowing brighter. The energy spread between them, warm and pure. Lyra, don't, he whispered, please. She smiled through her tears. You said I wasn't a weapon. I want to prove you were right. The ground trembled as light burst from her body, spreading outward like a sunrise. Evan shielded his eyes, shouting her name. The air filled with golden energy that reached the clouds, swallowing the red glow of the ship. The blast was silent. No sound, no fire, just light. It rippled across the sky, disarming every weapon, freezing every ship in its path. The machines fell quiet, engines dead. The command ship turned dark, drifting aimlessly through the clouds. When the light faded, the valley was still again. The air smelled of ozone and rain. Evan blinked through the haze, searching. Lyra, he called. He found her lying in the grass, her glow almost gone, her skin pale, her breath shallow. He knelt beside her, shaking. No, stay with me, he said. She looked up at him, her eyes faint but full of peace. It's over, she whispered. They can't hurt anyone now. Tears burned in his eyes. You did it, he said. You stopped the war. Lyra smiled weakly. No, she whispered. We did. Evan took her hand, pressing it to his heart. Please don't leave, he said, his voice breaking. She touched his face softly. You looked at me when no one else dared, she said, her words trembling. You made me feel real. The last light faded from her eyes as the sun rose higher, bathing the valley in gold. Evan held her close, his tears falling onto her still skin. Her body shimmered once more, then dissolved into pure light that drifted upward, merging with the dawn. He sat there for a long time, watching the sky turn blue. Above him, the silent ships began to retreat, their weapons forever disabled. In that quiet valley, surrounded by wildflowers and broken machines, Evan whispered her name one last time. The wind carried it far, beyond the mountains, beyond the stars. And somewhere, in that endless sky, a faint golden glow answered back, gentle and eternal.